Welcome, another episode. Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights here with Dave Sliepka. We're going to talk about then and now. ProSet, the card company. If you're young, you may have just heard about it, but they're an amazing, innovative company. Many of those innovations still reverberate in our hobby today. But first, thanks to our sponsors, Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication, comc.com, ComC, where you can sell your cards and people can see the scan of the exact card out in Seattle. Burbank Sports Cards, Mike Stadium Sports Cards in Colorado, Huggins and Scott Auctions, Heritage Auctions, Panini, Topps, and Upper Deck. Great sponsors. Hope you'll patronize them. Tell them you like the show if you like the show. If you don't like the show, tell me. So thanks, Dave, for being here. We're going to talk about ProSet. It takes us back more than 25, 30 years ago, about.
1989.
Yeah, 89. And you were, did you start our company in 91?
91.
Yeah. So 89, ProSet just jumped out. Unbelievable.
They launched at the National in 1989 in Chicago, which happened.
And you're a Chicago guy.
That was, I believe, my first National.
And that was football.
Yes.
Even though you're a hockey guy, but football.
Right. But to have
football was their key license. That was their apparently their sweet deal for a while.
It was. And they came out as the first official card product of the NFL, which was groundbreaking, and color photos.
Well, it gave them access to all the photo library.
Right.
It actually, but not that they were known for their photos, but it was just, and it wasn't extremely high quality card stock or anything like that.
But it was better than.
But
Topps.
It was better, yeah.
And they had color photos front and back. So again, 89, we're just a little bit after Upper Deck baseball coming out.
Right.
So they were right up. They were taking, as Upper Deck took baseball to a new level.
Right.
They were taking football to a new level
by having a huge set. By having a living set where
multiple series,
lots of variations,
color front and back, better card stock. You don't look at it as better card stock now, but back then that was a quality card.
Right.
The plastic packs were not wax, so you didn't get a damaged card on the back.
Yeah. What and did they? Well, let's see. Okay, so we've said, one of the ways we met at the ProSet Hockey Tour. So they were doing shows or tours, or they really brought marketing to the forefront for card companies, because otherwise they couldn't do their jillions of cases.
In 1990, when they launched hockey, they went all out. Same way as they sponsored a ProSet Hockey Tour, which was basically some shows in Chicago, Detroit, St. Louis, in the big markets for hockey, and they would basically put on the show, have autograph guests, and put out information on their products.
Why? Collectors and our friends and listeners, it was, since they were going so strong, what happened? I mean, they did football and hockey. They got in and they were just doing great. They did golf. They did NASCAR. So, I mean, they couldn't get into baseball and basketball, I guess, but I think they were printing a lot of football and a lot of hockey too, because it's still around.
Touched on non-sports.
So, and it wasn't sold through. It was sold from them, but I guess it wasn't opened. It was stored.
Right.
Speculated on.
That goes to the days where they didn't just make a product and then moved on to the next product. They made the product, and then as orders come in, they print more, and as orders come in, they print more. They kept making more. So as you touched on the living set concept, they basically had 3.5 series or 3 series in the first year of football.
Right.
Which was.
But they very quickly, didn't they have their own printing company? They had their own printing press.
I believe that's where they originated from, is that they had a relationship with Great Western. Here in the Dallas area, Great Western Press. And I think Ludd had that connection. I think that's what helped him really get the deal, was that relationship.
Well, producing the cards, at least back in those days, wasn't that hard, I don't think. I mean, the cards weren't as complicated as they are now. So clearly he's knocking on the door of NFL, and saying, what's it going to take? And he had, at some point, strong relationships with the head, the presidents or executive directors or CEOs of those entities. And so he gets his license, and I think Upper Deck paid. I mean, I think some of these guarantees that the card companies pay, those kind of relationships of people coming in and buying their way in, is what is up the ante. And so Ludd found a way to jump in, and then he started printing and printing. And so, but you wouldn't think he'd be bankrupt in just a few short years later.
I think your first led into the second is that the printing and the printing and the printing. He really leveraged the errors and varieties, and they made changes on the run, and probably in an intention to get the product right, he was also creating some crazy demand for all the different variations. So errors back then was a whole lot different. That'd be like, parallels now in a sense that people were chasing those like crazy.
A dynamic element of if you're not an expert, and again, it's in some sense helped us with a price guide and cataloging that, you couldn't just open up your pack and know what you had. You had to know whether this was an early or late pack, whether they have corrections or variations or something like. You had to know what to look
trademark,
for.
The large trademark, the small print, yellow print, and it really kind of ran its course really fast just when it came to the overproduction. They came out with a series, I believe, in 92, 93 called ProSet Platinum. That was really supposed to be a premium product, limited release, high demand, and really the production far outweighed what was promised. And there's no actual numbers known, but it was way too easy to find versus what they really sold it as. So I think the hobby got kind of scared off there. And as demand kind of continued to wane, the dealers started to lose trust in what, is this just going to be unlimited printing on everything that comes out?
Well, there's a series of books called the EMyth, and it talks about the entrepreneurial aspects of the types of personalities and skill sets that help companies grow from scratch. And Lud Denny was definitely a promoter. He was the founder and I suppose principal owner of the company. I'm not sure what the ownership structure was. I know he hired good people, and they had a couple hundred people, and we were just down the street from them, and yet we didn't really fraternize that much, but sometimes companies can coalesce around the image of the founder or the boss. And his company was, like I say, I think he hired some really good people, some of whom are still in the industry. But he was probably, older than me, not a whole lot older than me, but a little bit older than me. But we had a respectful relationship. I'm not an easy sell for what he was selling or even giving away, and yet. We really benefited from his promotion. But it turned out to be a lost leader to where he never recovered from. But he put football on the map. That just was amazing. Football was a sleepy, not very dynamic, and now football is just, and he made it come alive. He made it. There were ProSet cards everywhere. They were in the gas stations.
They were. And that's something that was also unique to the business is that he brought a upfront personality from a company that Topps, you didn't know who was leading. You didn't know what Arthur Sorn looked like. You didn't know what Cyberger looked like for most people. Yeah. And he was out front and you knew who Lud was. He was a figure.
He had a swagger, that's for sure. Yeah. And he's passed away. So we're talking about somebody that's not around anymore. He passed away 10 years ago or so. But he'd been out of the hobby. It's hard when I think he was all in. He was all in. He gave it all he had, and he had a great ride. He got fabulous publicity before things turned of how he was just an amazing entrepreneur. And it does take a lot to take a company from, he went from 0 to 100 million in sales in a year, maybe? I don't know. Year and a half?
Exactly. There was no ramp up. There was 0 to 60. In 1989, and by 1990, ProSet was a product that you had to have.
Right.
And then, Score entered the scene, Upper Deck entered the scene, and it instantly became competitive.
Well, it became a category. A category. And football was very legit at that point with multiple, and it helps that, there's a new crop of rookies every year, and players are setting records, and, you can watch the sport on TV, and you're seeing your heroes, and then you can go and get some cards, and the cards weren't that expensive. They weren't that expensive.
$1 packs back then. And you can't overlook that in their decline is that in 89, from 89 to 92, you went from one card company producing football to 4 or 5.
Yeah. Do you, one of the, I saw something on this. I don't know if it's from you. I think it might have been from Rich, talking to Rich about this, but some people think that ProSet's downfall was not the hobby. It was retail. That when things got going so strong, that they had these relationships with the hobby dealers and they were pumping through an appropriate amount of product through the hobby dealers, of which they were emerging at that time too. But then once Lud got an angle on getting his official NFL cards into these retail spaces who would just fill it up. And some of that may have been on consignment. And so the real downfall was that's one theory, that his downfall was that retail, who are they're not as concerned with sell-through. Well, they want sell-through, but they're really giving you shelf space, giving you an opportunity to sell your stuff, and he got a bunch of returns.
Yeah, and that's a big
and
thing.
Man, now
returns,
you're in trouble because
right.
You got.
Well, they had some really good people, and a few of them lasted in the industry for quite a while. I remember Bob Bovey was one of the first people there. Victor Schaefer, Bovey, who went on to run Press Pass. I believe he was at Wheels Racing before that. Victor Schaefer, who went on to create Press Pass, again, just right up the road on the same tollway here in Dallas.
Right.
And then when Press Pass went away, Victor has served various roles in the industry as a consultant, as a contributor. Right. Now he's a driving force at Fanatics down in Florida. Yeah. So they had some great minds, and some of them that stuck around in the business for a while. But their innovation really changed the business. It really did.
What one of the what ifs. I've done some what if episodes, and I did a few of them with Rich, and I don't even want to turn Rich loose on this one. But what if there hadn't been a Pro Set? If there had not been a Pro Set, would the world be a better place or a worse place? Well, I'm sure if you were actually, no offense, but if there was any stiffing involved, do you know who got stiffed according to the bankruptcy? No. NFL Players Association.
Okay.
And for those of you who have tracked our industry, in most of the sports, there's a little bit of tension between the properties people that own the leagues and the teams and those logos, and then the players, where there's a lot more turnover in the players. His bankruptcy, his biggest creditor was not the NFL. It was the NFL Players Association. And so even that would stick in the craw of the Player Association leadership. But
so if there wasn't a Pro Set, I don't think the hobby world would be that different. I think someone else would have picked it up. I think.
So he accelerated things, maybe.
He was the first, and you take away the first, then whoever was second would have been the first. I think our hobby was so dynamic and
he had a lot of firsts.
He was, and maybe not all of them would have appeared in Upper Deck, or not all of them would have appeared in Pacific or appeared in others. Right. But we're an industry that copies a lot of things, and I think there were a lot of creative minds back then that would have picked up the slack from the other companies.
Why did, how come we never went over and visited them? I don't remember you going over there or me going over there. And I remember them coming over seeing us. Was it a separation church and state a little bit, do you think?
I think back then it was. I think that was, we were kind of you come to us, we're not looking for anything. Right. But we would be willing to listen.
We weren't doing many ads in those days.
That was pre-card company ads. It really was. In the very beginning.
Yeah, in the very beginning. Well, that's a nice, actually, there's a lot of different ways to end on this. It would have been great to take their ads in 1990 and 91.
They were running ads in Super Bowl programs.
They would have, I'm just saying, we would have looked like a cheap deal, and we could have taken their money, and maybe the last check would have bounced, but a bunch of them perhaps wouldn't have. Well, fond memories of Pro Set and how they helped. And they help with NASCAR. They help with golf. They help with putting out cards that were comprehensive.
Major contributor in hockey. Yeah. Major contributor.
So thanks, Dave. Always great being with you. Thanks, listeners, for listening. A little bit more oral history about the hobby today. Just thinking back about Pro Set. I think they probably went under in 94. I think 90, 91, 92 were their big years, but they're still out there. Collectors, and there's some good stuff in there. So thanks, everybody. Be back again tomorrow with another episode. Thanks, Dave. We'll catch you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.
The man in the house of cards. The man in the house of cards. The man in the house of cards is doing